Hi everyone, in today's video we're going to talk about how Stoicism saved my life, because the truth is, if I hadn't lost over 140 pounds between 2017 and 2020, I would have had a 90% higher chance of dying when I was infected with COVID-19. Hi everyone, happy new year and welcome back to my channel. If it's your first time here, I'm Sam, the Stoic teacher. I'm a philosophy and theology graduate from the University of Cambridge, and I now have the pleasure of teaching philosophy and religious studies in London. Now in this video, I'm going to talk about 5 specific Stoic quotes that saved my life. Now the first quote is something to do with the Stoic festival mindset. It originates from the following Epictetus quote. Epictetus tells us, "When you are alone, you should call this condition tranquility and freedom. When you are with many, you shouldn't call it a crowd or trouble or uneasiness, but festival and company, and contentedly accept it." Now, prior to finding the philosophy of Stoicism, I was quite literally the worst person when it came to noise. You know those people in the cinema that would be whispering in the back corner, back when we could go to the cinema, pre-pandemic, and they'd be whispering over the dialogue. I'd be the worst. I'd be sitting there, slowly getting angrier and angrier, angrier and angrier. Well, you know, eventually I had to give a passive-aggressive, could you be quiet please? When I discovered the philosophy of Stoicism, I saw this quote from Epictetus. He talks about the analogy of the Olympics, and he says, you know, why would you go to a stadium and then be furious that someone, you know, potentially bumped into you? Like, it's a busy place, it's going to happen. Equally, in a cinema, there's going to be lots of people and there might be some light whispering. Now, I understand if the person's shouting right in my face, but the net anger and disturbance to my tranquility just wasn't worth it. Matt Van Natter, he talks about how he would actually say the word festival to himself in these situations and he would immediately just feel better. And that's what I started to do. And equally, if you think back to the first part of this quote, when you're alone, you should call this condition tranquility and freedom. This is where this came in, when I had to isolate in this studio flat by myself over Christmas all the way up to New Year, and I really wanted to see my 2 beautiful nieces. But luckily, Epictetus's words were able to support me. This ancient reframing tool was really helpful. Anytime I started to feel lonely, I started to think, hold on, no, this is tranquility, this is freedom, you know, this is my chance to read. And really, to be honest, I wasn't really in a condition to read. I was pretty much coughing and just in bed. Thank you to everyone that sent nice messages. On to the second quote that saved my life. Back in 2017, I weighed over 322 pounds. I was morbidly obese. I was deeply unhappy. And discovering the philosophy of Stoicism entirely changed my life. I've lost over 145 pounds since then. And this is documented in a Stoic weight loss journey, which you can go and watch above. More episodes coming very soon. Let's go to this quote from Musonius Rufus and talk about the Stoic concept of voluntary discomfort. "We will train both body and soul when we accustom ourselves to cold, heat, thirst, hunger, scarcity of food." And this touches upon the wider Stoic idea of voluntary discomfort, which is that if we prepare ourselves for difficult circumstances in advance, we can be happy despite adversity in the future. For me, I'd lost weight previously and then put it back on and put on even more and got morbidly obese again. And so what Stoicism provided for me is a mental framework, a philosophy of life, where this concept of voluntary discomfort isn't just to do with, oh, lose weight in order to get a six-pack. It's not about losing weight. It's more about what is the right thing to do in order for us to increase our well-being later on. How can I argue that this actually saved my life? Well, if we look at the data, I've been reading through the NHS data, and one thing that you can see is that people at moderate risk, i.e. clinically vulnerable, it says anyone who is very obese and has a BMI of 40 or above. We can also see that people from a Black, Asian or minority ethnic background are particularly at risk, more likely to get seriously ill from coronavirus. If you combine me being from an Asian background and having a BMI of over 40. In fact, I calculated it and it came to 45, a BMI of 45, which takes me into a severely obese category. So someone who had a BMI of 35 to 40 would increase their chance of dying from COVID-19 by 40%, whilst a BMI of greater than 40 could increase the risk by 90%. And so I would have had a 90% higher risk of dying from coronavirus. Now, don't get me wrong, it hasn't been easy, and anyone out there that claims that, oh, we shouldn't be worried about coronavirus, they're talking nonsense. I know that it would have been significantly worse had I not got my health in order, and the philosophy of Stoicism was a huge part of that. Moving on to the third Stoic quote that saved my life and helped me survive COVID-19. Many people look at the dictionary definition of Stoicism, this fake one here, and they think that Stoicism means you repress your emotions and you're kind of antisocial and you're not very friendly. Just not true. Look at this line from Marcus Aurelius. He says, "Don't be ashamed to need help. If you've been wounded and you need a comrade to pull you up, so what?" This is something I really need to be reminded of. I'm one of these people who I pretty much get on with things. I don't really asking someone for help, especially if it's something that I would deem an inconvenience to them, is the last thing I would possibly do. You know, I would never want to cause someone an inconvenience. It's just the way my mum raised us, a certain level of manners and reverence for people's space. You know, whilst having to self-isolate over Christmas, it was the case that I just needed certain things. You know, there was some issues, some medical issues that required some antibiotics, some medication. I just wasn't able to leave the house. Of course I couldn't leave the house because I couldn't risk infecting anyone, and my friends really came through. I had so many people message me like, do you need anything? So many of you guys on Instagram, on YouTube, asking me, how are you? I really did have to depend on people. I had a friend who went to a massive shop for me and brought it, and he's still refusing to accept money for it, which my wonderful girlfriend dropped a bunch of presents and food at my door. Stoicism taught me that there's no need to try and act like a tough guy. There's no need to try and do everything by myself. There's no need to try and hide my emotions. It's okay to ask for help. And I think many people could do with that reminder, and the philosophy of Stoicism is absolutely about being open, having close friendships, trusting people. Let's move on to the fourth Stoic quote, an idea that saved my life and helped me survive COVID-19 and the adversity around it, and that is the concept of premeditating adversity. Myself and my good friend Ali Abdal have a Skillshare class where we talk about Stoicism and premeditating adversity, voluntary discomfort, and you can actually get free access by clicking in the description below. I have other videos on premeditating adversity specifically that I've linked in the class on YouTube here, so please go up there and click onto those. There's one about how Gary Vee uses this technique in his day-to-day life above. Seneca tells us, if you would not have a man flinch when the crisis comes, train him before it comes. Over the 3 years from 2017 to 2020, Stoicism was preparing me for something, but I didn't know what it was. And I know now that this is what I was being trained for, and I know that it's similarly training me for some of the really difficult things, like bereavements that I will face later on, or if there's, you know, other complications with my health. And so this technique is something that I'll continue to use moving forward, and I hope that it brings some value to you. The fifth quote, Donald Robertson tells us, he's a Stoic author who I've had the pleasure of interviewing on this channel. You can go and see some of my videos with him below. Don't imagine absent things as though they were present. Imagine present things as though they were absent. And this is really about gratitude. Too often we think to ourselves, oh, if only I had X. So like, let's say, you know, I've got a car, but I want a Lamborghini. And then once I've got a Lamborghini, I want a yacht. And the thing is that that treadmill never really ends. What we want to be trying to cultivate from a Stoic perspective is gratitude for what we already have. Not, I want a Lamborghini, but I'm glad that I have a car. You know, not, oh, I'll be happy when I have this amount of money, but I'm happy that I have a loving family. Gratitude journaling was something that really got me through this period, and I would highly recommend the bullet journal method by Ryder Carroll combined with the gratitude practice. And if you want some prompts, I'm going to send you to mine and my good friend Ali Abdal's Skillshare class, link down below. The Stoics were advising us to journal 2,000 years ago. Modern research bears out the fact that they were absolutely right to do so. To conclude, these are the 5 Stoic quotes that changed my life. If you want to see more videos on some of these topics, feel free to click on this playlist, which is Short Snappy Stoicism, where I talk about ancient wisdom for modern times, 59-second book reviews on Stoicism, talk about certain techniques, so do go and have a look. I'll see you next week for some more ancient wisdom for modern times. Bye now.